Well, good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. Our first episode of 2026. It seems amazing that we've got to this point and we've been going for over a year and a half now. And just thank you to everyone who is listening to us or watching us around the world. We know from comments that have been made that we've got people all over the world, the Middle East and the Far East, APAC region. Thank you for being here. If you're watching live, then we have comments today because this is a live edition. So if you are on LinkedIn or YouTube and you want to leave a comment or you want to ask a question or make some remark, please do so. We will try and include them in the conversation wherever you are and whatever you are asking. Before I get to my guest, obviously 2026 has got a lot of things ahead of us. Thank you to everyone that got involved in the Boxing Day episode. We reran the Marcelo Starikov edition, and people have responded amazingly to his work. I mean, it is amazing work, so it's great to be involved with Marcelo and that activity. But there's lots of things coming up, both. I mean, the next edition will be right at the end of BET, and we're at BET on the DBT stand. So if you're at BET and you want to come and find me, please, we'll be on the DBT stand. Please come and find me. I can't tell you what stand number that is at the moment, but it will be where the Department of Business and Trade centres their work, usually just inside the North Mall. So please just come and find me there. It'd be really great to hear you, see you. Just introduce yourself and say hello. But let's come to today's episode. A long-time friend of mine, George Pearson, CEO of Ansphere. Some of you might remember Pearson Publishing, but Ansphere is where George is now. I invited him just to start the year with me talking about, there's so much going on in the education world, both in a sort of well-being sense and in the training, CPD as we call it. There's so many things that George has been involved in. I just wanted him to come and just have a conversation about where we see, we're both lifelong educators, and there's a conversation to be had around where education is going and where we see the resourcing and the whole process. So it's my pleasure to welcome George. Welcome to Friday Focus.
Good morning, Chris, and good morning anyone else who's listening, and a happy New Year.
And absolutely. And look, you introduce. I've given a little, George, but introduce yourself and just give a feel for your involvement in what we refer to as the education world.
I shall try and be brief. I started my working life as a biology teacher. I then went and worked in business, went back into biology teaching, and then set up what became an educational publishing company. And I suppose that my work over the last 40 years has been in three main parts. Firstly, trying to support teachers and managers, leaders in schools do their job through providing a wide variety of curriculum resources and things for leadership management. And then I suppose moving more towards helping staff, all staff in schools, and I want to emphasize the all, and actually quite a lot of volunteers, because governors are volunteers, to develop in their roles and make a greater contribution. And then overlaid across that has been an attempt, with varying degrees of success, to deploy technology to
George, I think we've lost you for a moment. If you can hear me.
An interesting experience over the years. And I suppose if you don't mind, Chris, I might start this off with a number of observations over the last things that I've experienced over, and which I hope will lead into further aspects of discussion. First thing is that education remains a vital engine for change across society. I don't think it's any less the case now than it's been since Victorian times. If we're to have a better society and achieve greater equity of opportunity and to ensure social mobility, education has to be at the heart of that. So I want people to understand that that is if you like. It is an abiding passion of mine that we should make sure that that happens. The second thing I think is very important to understand, which can put the brakes on that, is that the education system is inherently very conservative with a small c. And I'm sure there will be people who disagree with me. I don't think you will, Chris, but and I think that applies from government down to the level of the individual practitioner. I think that the third thing I'd like to say, and this is still a problem, despite some of your great Friday posts bringing in this, trying to highlight the importance of this, and that is raising the profile of vocational studies and courses. I think that that has been a perennial issue in our education system, that bringing that parity of esteem with academic work has foundered far too many times and remains an issue. The fourth thing I would like to suggest is that embedding the effective use of technology across education has and continues to be, I would argue, relatively slow and at times painful. And I think that that's something that we could all aspire to try and address. And I think the last thing, which is very much up your street and something I believe in fervently, is that the understanding and productive application of data, its analysis, and the information you can derive from that analysis remains weak.
Yeah.
The last thing I'd like to say, because I want to be positive, because I am naturally a positive person, is that teachers are a remarkable group of people. There are obviously good ones, bad ones, brilliant ones, but as a group, because they are natural or have to be natural performers, they can be very big characters and have a very positive effect on any environment in which they operate.
Mm. I mean, that's really true. And you know, we've been around teachers all our lives. So they're kind of, you know, so many people that we've. I mean, I spent the evening yesterday with another character that I've been in 5 different schools with, and you think, you know, just the impact across the world he's had is yeah, absolutely. But
extraordinary.
A quiet, straightforward person who's just doing the job but does it brilliantly. That's, you know,
yes,
yeah, absolutely. So look, let's go in your kind of précis there, or back to number one, that an agent for societal change. I mean, you know, there's been all sorts of efforts and conversations over the years. I'm thinking, you know, the paper that came out of CST around, you know, the school is the center, the hub of a community, and it's there's a struggle with that, isn't it? Because then every social ill gets focused on the school, and then there's the overload that comes with that. But there is no doubt, is there, that, you know, children are the center of the future, in the sense of it's going to be their community when they move through. So we have a responsibility to kind of prepare them for that without taking on all of society's ills. It's that seems to be the balance that's not been struck well. George, what do you think on that?
I think the first thing for everyone to remember is, with the exception of those who are electively home educated, schools are the only universal service for children. Fortunately, not all children end up in hospitals or requiring attention from social care or law enforcement, and therefore schools are inevitably vital. And they are very much, or I think in all good cases, as you say, the heart of the community. Everyone goes to school, as I say, bar a few, very few. And so it is both a very considerable responsibility and a very important opportunity that schools have to influence things.
Yeah. And I know there's so many. I mean, you're saying about the characters that are involved in it, but, you know, I talk to a lot of people, and they struggle with this moral purpose thing about, you know, so teachers hold that, you know, exactly what you're saying. We're doing it for that. For a deep reason, you know, we want to see social change, we want to see social security, we want to see sustainability. So we're doing it for that reason. It's not just about filling brains with knowledge.
No, not at all. I think that's all too often brought to the fore ahead of, as what you call it, it's a moral purpose.
Mm.
And I think sadly, I think that a lot of people working in education don't derive the satisfaction they ought to from their contribution, which is huge.
Yeah. The comment that was made to me yesterday was, you and I have been around schools 40 years. I think it's been a long time. But I remember a time when walking the corridor and interacting with other members of staff, it was fun. And we had fun during the day, and the kids were involved in that fun. Not silliness and not stupidity, but it was just fun. There were smiles on people's faces. It was an enjoyable thing to be part of. The comment that was made yesterday is that a school leader, and he's not the only one that I've had the conversation with, is we've lost that sense of joy, fun, engagement. It's very get in the classroom, get sat down, get still, get quiet, get learning, and we've lost that kind of engagement. And actually, another conversation I had yesterday was around the attendance strategies. Getting children into school, and it kind of we came to the conclusion that we need to give children a reason to be there, and that to me, that fun part was really part of it.
It's very interesting you give that description, because I've always argued that I've only ever had one proper job, because for me teaching was far too much fun. I can't possibly describe that. I can't say that. I started teaching in the 1970s, and I had 2 years working in a small business where I was a mere small cog in a greater machine, and that was very hard work and desperately unrewarding in many ways compared to teaching. And then for the last 40 years I've been self-employed, and that's not a real job, that's a way of life. So it's as you know, and I think that you are right to say it's very sad that a significant element of joy has been lost.
But the thing, I guess, in my mind, George, the thing that's coming through is, I now talk internationally. So I was talking with a school leader in Australia on Tuesday morning. I spoke to another one. I spoke to the Japanese education on Tuesday as well. And I get the feel that the kind of, we're saying that school is the center of societal stability. It's where that's the future is established. But around the world, there seems to be a very different view. There seems to be a different level of respect. There's a different level of ambition around what the education is. And I guess, what's happened to our system? Why have we lost this joy and this? It's become very accountable. It's become very focused on measures and measurable outcomes. What's your? I mean, we away from the broadcast, we might chat on it.
I'm perfectly willing to stick my neck on the block. I just think that we have been, or the education system has been beset by an obsession with narrow measures. I would love to believe that there is something magical about getting a grade 4, even better, a grade 5 at GCSE English and Math. Is there? My heart goes out to all those concerned, particularly the poor students, but also everyone involved in trying to squeeze them through this peculiar set of measures that I'm not convinced by at all.
Well, you know my narrative. I've said this many times, and I will repeat it because I don't know that I've said it here that often. Any system that enables a person that's part of it to fail has failed. That the whole idea, and I have a problem with the term failure anyway. I mean, if we go back to the turn of the century, we were talking about the grading system as there was no failure. It was where you are. And having worked in challenging schools, you and I, you've been to some of the schools that I worked in. They're tough places. A child that gets their 3 could be the world-changing thing for them because they've had nothing up to that point. So to get them a 3 or a whatever it was in those days, an E or an F, was actually an achievement, and it was the start of something else. as I said the other day, that the education world, being in school is not the end of my learning. I've actually written it in the beginning of my next book. Learning didn't stop when I finished at school. It's carried on through our life, and I know that's true for you, George. It's it's part of all that we are and all that we do.
I couldn't agree more. I feel a great sense of injustice for so many youngsters now. If you look at I'm going to be rough in my estimations, but it's 30 to 40% of children do not get level 4-5 in English and maths. And that's outrageous. Why are they labeled, as you say, as failures when they're not failures at all necessarily?
They just didn't access what was being given to them
at the time they do. And work we're doing now, trying to give opportunities for people to study degrees who didn't get any level 3 qualifications, A levels or equivalents, is deeply rewarding, because it doesn't mean that they're incapable.
Actually, George, tell us a bit about that, because you're the apprentice model and getting into teaching that.
Well, it's a very good. I love you using the term, because it isn't an official use of apprenticeship levy funding, but the idea that we give opportunities for people who are either already working in schools in support roles, do not have a degree but wish to become teachers, to do so. They don't have to leave their job, they don't have to leave their family responsibilities, but they can gain a degree and then go through initial teacher training and become teachers who I would argue are going to be exceptionally well prepared, because they'll have spent a minimum of 4 years working in a school. Not like me, just 1 term, plus a couple of weeks organizing the library in a primary school. Those days are gone, thankfully. But I think the opportunities we're providing, and interestingly, we've now got our first school leavers on the course in a group of primary schools, and they have left school, gone straight into a job in a professional environment, which is very supportive, leads to a true vocation, teaching, and they seem to be thriving both professionally and academically. And it's very exciting, because these are people who were concerned about incurring 50 or 60,000 pounds worth of debt, increased tax liability. They didn't necessarily feel that was a necessity to leave home, and they can be going home with £1,000 net in their bank account monthly, having paid a tuition fee. And what we're hoping is that we will give opportunities to people who would have not necessarily thought of gaining a degree and becoming teachers. And so we are contributing to social mobility. But we're also helping schools and trusts and other groups to develop a pipeline of really, really well-prepared teachers who understand the philosophy, the ethos of the institutions in which they have been working and will wish to continue to work.
And I through my career, even 25 years ago, we were doing something similar, with petals and kettles and whatever the other in those days. So those people that were going, so they did access courses, and they did the, what we referred to as learning while learning. It was that sense of being able to earn a living. In fact, I remember having a conversation with a young lady who, in a troubled area of the country, was pregnant. She was facing, a 17-year-old with a baby, and the school was telling her, "You're going to have to leave." And I remember sitting down with her and saying, "No, you don't have to leave. We'll find out ways. We'll find ways." Even we actually put a creche in the school to enable that to happen. But the idea was that life doesn't have to stop to do learning, and just because something's happened, you're not going to leave and lose all this opportunity. She ended up with a degree. She got her A levels. We facilitated it because that was important. Sorry, George, go.
It's a marvelous example, and I'm delighted to say that we have a parallel example, in that we have a student on one of our courses, which we don't accredit them. Obviously, we're not a university, but we work at the University of Buckingham. But the woman concerned didn't do very well in her GCSEs because she gave birth at about the time she was supposed to be sitting her exams. She's a very capable woman, and it's delightful to have given her a second chance to gain a degree as a mother and as a person working in a school.
I've got to say, two white older men talking about this in that sense, it's it's not patronizing in any sense. To me, it's the responsibility of an educator to find the way for every child that comes in. This is the whole idea that it's an equity provision.
Yes.
That means it's not equal. It's got to be right at the point of source, but it's for everyone. And there are life circumstances that will change someone's experience, and we need to adapt to it and bend to it and make sure that they can be included. That's true inclusion, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes,
that's
and it fosters the whole concept of lifelong learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that capacity that whatever's going on, I can give some time to better myself, to do something, to learn a new skill. I mean, and everything we know about the modern world is that that's going to be the way forward. We do need to be facilitating people to learn as they're growing, and their careers will change, but the core skills won't. They're things that are kind of basic to each of us.
I think, as far as I'm concerned, that's a convenient way of, because I want to give suitable weight and time to the whole concept of data. And you know how much of a fan I am of what you do, and you even wrote a very good piece for us. And I do think that that's another area in which the sector needs to sharpen its pencil. I think I think there is a fear. I think there are twin fears that are associated with the kind of work that you do. One fear is that it involves statistics. It involves data which people may find tangled, difficult to interpret, even more difficult to act upon. But I also think that there is an unfortunate, and I would suggest unnecessary, fear of having to do things when you're aware of facts. Wouldn't that be fair?
Yes, it is. And I think, particularly in the English system, I don't think it's not true in Wales so much, or Scotland. When money's tight, innovation is the place you go, because it's you've got to find solutions. I've just written this week. The newsletter this week is this whole idea of the deficit mindset. So we haven't got, so we can't do.
Yes.
And the point is, at the point of pressure, we then, the bright and capable and aware people will take what they know and find solutions. So how do we respond in this circumstance? You're actually, George, the one thing I find about data is I go to a lot of schools where the first thing a head will say to me, or a CEO, or not so much bursars, because they tend to deal with numbers all the time, but a lot of them will say, I don't do numbers. I don't do spreadsheets. I don't get numbers. I'm a people person, or I'm a wordsmith or whatever.
Yes.
And I've started reflecting back to them and saying, look, if you sat in that chair and said to me, I don't do words.
Yes, I'm not very literate.
Yes. Yeah, not literate at all. There would be a different judgment around them.
Yes.
But why is it acceptable for people that are running, in a primary sense, £1 million business, or in a secondary sense, often an £8 to £10 million business? They don't do number, and they don't. I find that quite challenging.
As a good man of Essex, I'm as you are. I'm very pleased to say that I've been involved in the Essex Education Task Force board for several years. And I think some of the work that's been done in Essex around the year of reading, the year of number, and now the year of opportunity has been really innovative and impressive. And I think that one of the things that I've learned, particularly from the year of numbers, is going around to schools, and this is not just a phenomenon you would observe in Essex, but if you go and you want to embarrass a primary head teacher, one of the best ways that I've discovered is to just ask how many of their members of staff, not suggesting necessarily that they would fall into this category, would be unable to explain any of the numbers on their payslip. Now, I would suggest that is of personal importance.
Hmm.
What you're paid, what the deductions are, and why they're made. But exactly what you say, there is such a deep-seated unease about numbers. And as you say, it's almost a badge of honor that I'm not very good at dealing with numbers. And the consequences, you are quite right, is that when people are presented with the kind of analysis that you do, they switch off or bury their head deep in the sand. And that's so sad.
It is, and I think it's limiting what's going on in the system. Because I mean, in terms of the narrative, I worked with sort of Lord Agnew and the ICFP unit.
Yes,
but I was on the edge of it. I'd say I was central. I did write some of the stuff that's now out there about it, as you know, because I wrote the piece that you generously published through your platform. But I have a struggle with simply presenting curriculum metrics, because I don't think they tell the story. They are what you've just said. They are just numbers. They're contact ratio, average pupil, average class size, average salary, all those kind of things. They're just simply numbers, because so many of the leaders that we work with come back and say, well, Chris, I've got this list of numbers, but I haven't a clue what to do with them. I don't know where they come from.
No, and I think that's a sadness, and it goes back to my concerns about, for example, GCSE maths. Is the curriculum that is followed by 600,000 pupils approximately in each year group in our schools in England, Wales and Northern Ireland to a certain similar extent, is it what they really need for life? I'm not at all convinced, because people don't come out of school terribly numerate.
But is that? I mean, there's a pedagogical question there. Again, what I was, like I said, the leader I was talking to yesterday, we seem to have got stuck into this. Come into the classroom. I'm going to present you with knowledge. You must acquire that knowledge, and then we'll test it. But it's in this sterile classroom environment with no. And how many times we've heard children that have said, "Am I going to use this ever in my life? Where's this in real?" And it seems unusual. I mean, I'm talking to a bricklayer who said, "Yeah, I use Pythagoras. I do, because I've got to get the building square." So they're what we're not seeing is the application of the knowledge, and that's deeply rooted in the. I've written other stuff on this Greek mindset around, knowledge is more important than rhetoric, how it's applied or where it's going to be in used. And I think that speaks. And after I do the break, maybe we come back to your point about raising the profile of vocational education. I think it's knowledge for knowledge's sake by people that know lots of knowledge.
Well, I think very quickly as a taster, I think that the ever increasing effects that we're seeing of artificial intelligence are going to re-establish the value of things that AI can't do. Yes,
absolutely. So, George, let me just pause for a moment. I'll do the bits that we do, and then we'll come back to the conversation in a second. So, thank you for those that are making comment. I will bring the comments in a moment. So, thank you, Sophie Moss, Steve Russell. I'll bring your conversation in a second. Just to emphasize what's happening. Friday Focus goes out every other week. It's a 2-weekly broadcast live on LinkedIn and YouTube. It's then generated through Substack and Spotify. So wherever you get the feed, please do like, share, and subscribe. It does help us to grow the audience, and it grows the influence of this. We know that the show is seen 1,000 times over that 2-week period, probably nearer 1,500 times now. The newsletter that we've referred to is on my LinkedIn profile. You can subscribe to it on our website, smartcurriculum.net. And again, people are getting involved in all that presents. So please do like, share, and subscribe on any of those 4 channels: LinkedIn, YouTube, Substack, Spotify. Please get involved in the conversation. If you want the newsletter, go to the website, sign up. We'll get it sent straight to your inbox. And as I say quite often, please get involved in the conversation. We want you to be part of this conversation. Now, you know also that we've referred to, I mean, George is a publisher, and I've done some work through with them. But I've also published a book, which I'm just going to put on the screen now. The Efficient School. This is a self-published book which you find on Amazon. If you use the link that's there, it covers the material that I've been talking about for some time. And I guess we come down to this basic thing: do more than survive, design to thrive. And I think that speaks to this whole bigger issue of the deficit mindset and changing your mindset, thinking again. But also we've got coming out in March the first printed book, the Perfect Timetable. That will be with us early in March, and there'll be more on that to follow. So please do get involved. Follow us on LinkedIn. That's where you'll see most of the information that's going on and all the things that we've been talking about. So, George, let's come back to our conversation. We've had this conversation many times over vocational education and this idea of the kind of hierarchy that, the number of schools that don't do well. Actually, they talk about BTECs rather than the fact that there are gamut of well, there's 50 qualifications at Key Stage 4 that are of all sorts of different boards. What do you see as the underlying issue with it? I mean, you and I have been around it for a while. What's going on that makes it such a difficult conversation?
If there was a simple answer to that, we might come up with a relatively practical solution. I think there are a number of things. Firstly, I think that if you look at the route that has been followed by most people who end up in teaching, it's predominantly, if not exclusively, academic. And I think that the number of people who actually end up in schools who do not have a vocational background predominate, and therefore to a degree it's alien. And I think people are inherently reticent about getting involved in something they don't feel they understand or have experienced. I think that government, despite all their declared good intentions around vocational courses and study, don't actually ensure that there is true parity. That's the impression I get from talking to people. I think there are issues around funding. I think there are issues about capital expenditure to provide schools with the plant they need to provide vocational courses effectively. I think there are societal issues that mean that they're not as highly esteemed, and it's unfortunate.
But I mean, that's I as a school leader, because I am so positive about. I mean, I'm not a great lover of the word vocational learning, but it is what we have. I prefer professional learning because it raises the
much better term. Thank you.
It's so, but we'll stick with vocational because that's what people understand. All of those things that you've kind of described, the way that people perceive it, so the social understanding of and I think Pearson have done a brilliant job over the years through GNVQ and all of that. Well, I mean, I can go back to CPVE, TVI.
Yes, exactly. All those marvelous things.
Yeah, but they were about getting young people involved in. I mean, actually, 1960s, 1970s. We can even talk about ROSLA if you want, the raising of the school leaving age and all where that came from, because
Manpower Services Commission, all those
absolutely
things.
Yeah, all of those things. So we've struggled with it for all of this time. That's 45, 50 years. We've still not got that view. So what is it? To me, the press have got this view. Whenever I see something around qualifications, BTECs are almost seen as the it's that term that's used for, well, they're substandard. And I still hear people, yes, knife skills was not a qualification that should have been offered in schools. I agree with that, but that's one qualification. Equally, you've said that there are issues with GCSE maths. There are issues with GCSE history, as I was, talking to a head that's a historian yesterday, who's a real issue about. So there are problems with all of the qualifications. It's not just vocational. So that's not the issue. To me, it was about creating the narrative. I want your child to be successful. It's about the assessment methodology, cramming for an exam or staged assessments over a period of time that involve practical activity and observational learning. All of that, to me, sounds much more what some of the children many of the children we were dealing with, they wanted. They wanted something that was, okay, tell me I'm being successful today. Show me I can do this. But we need to change the narrative, don't we? We need to get the press involved.
I think there is going to be a change in the narrative over the coming years. I really do, because try getting an electrician or a plumber to come and do work for you. They'll say, we had an example, even someone to do some work fitting a few items in a kitchen. No, can't do it. We've got no space until early May.
Yeah,
we're so busy.
Yes.
And these are people who are making a big contribution to society. They're earning very good livings, and it's time that people started putting these trades on a par with what would have in the past been described as professional roles, because they are professional. If you look at if you're an electrician and you're installing complex systems and solar panels and chargers for EVs and things, you've really got to understand the science, the engineering, the legal side, the administration of and the full thing. These are not simple jobs.
No,
they are proper professions now, and they're well remunerated. They're very challenging and rewarding, and I don't see why the education system isn't reflecting that, giving them equal parity.
But I think there is a degree. I mean, I'm really positive about the UTC system within the UK, and it is unique in the world, which is why the Right Honourable Robert Halfon is really interesting to see what he's doing in the international scope. But I'm really interested to see the UTC sleeve program, which is basically saying take that methodology and run it within a school. Now,
Very good.
It's brilliant. I mean, I've been working with schools to achieve that probably for the last 15 years in terms of smart curriculum. I've said that to people, and we've kind of performed it without having the label. But this whole idea that could be, that takes quite an entrepreneurial leader to say, we're going to commit to this and we're going to do this. But if you're working in an area where children are leaving your school to go to the local UTC, you will definitely focus your mind on something that's going to get you to keep the learners, and that means change the curriculum. Don't try and change the kids and to give them different stories about what they need. I
heartily agree. My hesitation is born of the fact that I live and work in Cambridge, and the UTC here, which was linked to what I will describe as the giant biomedical campus built around the regional hospital, really struggled for a while. I think I'm pleased to say I think it's on a firmer footing now, but it's very sad that it found it so difficult.
But that example, and I'm not going to quote examples around the country, but there are, we know that there's this range of systems that some have worked, some haven't, and that's to do with the qualification framework and the Ofsted judgment than anything. How do you get? I mean, because in the biomedical one, we had the chance of doing medical history, and they decided that medical history wasn't appropriate GCSE, so they took it off the program. But it would have been perfect
Yes.
for that area. We have not joined up the qualification
No.
outcomes with the kind of ambition of that learning program. So great for engineering, great for media, not so good for medical sciences because there are no qualifications there. And it great intention, not really thought through or structured, and that's been the way I've seen. Now, in an international context, I mean, obviously there are other countries that have got systems that are very different. I mean, the German system particularly. I mean, that's very focused on an economic future. Their journey is, and it. Well, look at Germany. Look at where it is. I mean, okay, it's got its issues, and I think maybe the current immigration issues might be something that they've challenged. But that I'm looking for a segue, George, into your thought on AI, because some of the work that I've been doing and reading on in the use of AI is this multilinguistic teaching, using AI to translate in a classroom with, so rather the dearth of translators that we have with all of the people that are speaking other languages, using technology to achieve a successful result is I mean, I know certainly Wales are quite interested in it because of their commitment to the Welsh language. Now, there's your comment on AI at the beginning was,
well, yes, I think there are obvious ways in which AI can contribute significantly to what goes on in the classroom and in preparation for what goes on in the classroom. But I think that there are serious implications about the roles that human beings are going to perform in society in the future. There are certain things that I think it's inevitable that AI will do less expensively, more quickly, and to a higher standard. And I think that we've got to be, in our case, the two of us, peripheral members of the education system. I think that the education system has got to be thinking very carefully about the skills that are going to be required. And those are going to be more, I think, about caring, more about tasks that have to be performed manually. And I think that what you raised and the question about, to a certain extent, simultaneous interpretation stroke translation is a perfect example. Why would you have a whole string of human beings trying to do it? Terribly inefficient, terribly expensive, when you might be able to get relatively low-powered computers connected to the internet, being able to do it for you very swiftly and effectively.
But it's to me, it's that I read the stuff that Marcellus Arrowcroft has written about trans-language learning. It's that, we've got this thing in the country that we call EAL, so English as an alternative language or second or other language. And we have this expectation that you will learn English so that you can learn. But what we've forgotten is that in their own language, they've been learning up to that point anyway. So trans-language learning, meaning that I could be speaking in English, but they could be hearing it or seeing it in whatever language they need. And so their learning can continue while they're experiencing this language change. They're going through that, all the confidence.
Right. And in fact, you're just ensuring that there isn't a delay in their learning.
Exactly.
Through what are increasingly unnecessary language barriers.
And that I'm going to link it back to what you said earlier about when we start measuring things, the measurements that those pictures tell us are not necessarily true. That yes, okay, so you're not speaking English, but if you did this test in Romanian or German or whatever, you'd possibly be better than anybody else in the classroom, and that's often the case in some of these.
Another of my long-term friends in the education sector told me a marvelous story. He's a senior leader in a school. I'll say it's in Peterborough because it is, and that's important because it's a very, very mixed community there, ethnically and in terms of language. And he's very proud, I think, of his school, where they had an Afghan girl arrive in year 8. She didn't speak any English, and when through an interpreter they asked her, what sort of schooling have you had? She said, none. Never been to school? Anything. Anyway, why this is an interesting story is because the school was very supportive. Her parents were very supportive, and she was incredibly determined and obviously capable. My colleague, as it were, tells me that she managed to get a better grade at GCSE English than he had, having started in year 8 with no English and no previous formal education.
Yeah. So
that's what you can do if you're given the opportunity, and that is why schools are so important.
Absolutely. And leaders in those schools with we could call it growth mindset. I would call it an open mind to that view of learning is not just within the language that we are working in this school. We're a global society now. We are, there are people coming in and out of our schools who have different language acquisition. In fact, some of the learners we come across that are speaking 5-6 different languages because of depending on where they've come from in the world. I mean, blow apart the idea of our struggles with modern foreign languages in England. It's a changing world.
It's a completely different attitude to the acquisition of language, completely in other countries.
Yes,
and it's not. I'm not going to be too critical of our own population or of MFL teachers. It's that if you speak English as your mother tongue, you're at such a global advantage that the incentives to learn other languages are very much lower.
Interesting. So, George, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing at the moment. What's sort of high? So the course that you're working on.
Yes, I suppose it's after my 47 years or whatever it is in and around the education sector. I think this is what we're doing now is for me the most satisfying thing that I've done, because if I've had the great privilege of going around and meeting quite a few of the students. We've got more than 300 students on a BA in primary education, and these are all people who work in schools for reasons that are probably not in any sense their fault, weren't able to acquire the qualifications academically to go to university, or were prevented from going to university when a lot of people do through personal circumstances, are now getting an opportunity they thought had passed them by. And it's a situation where it's difficult to find out who isn't winning, because the individuals getting an opportunity and someone, I mean, let's be pecuniarily blunt, are giving the opportunity to double their income by changing from being a teaching assistant to being a teacher. And so they gain their broader family gains because they're more professionally satisfied, they're earning more money, probably happier. The individual school can benefit because they will have had in their midst someone who is working as a teaching assistant for 3 years, getting more and more skilled, confident and committed. And then they're going to get a trainee teacher who's great, because they've had 3 years experience in a school. They're much better prepared for the challenges they will face in the classroom on their own teaching. And then they become teachers and make a greater contribution, particularly if they're in the school or in a part of a multi-academy trust, for example, where they have been immersed in the particular culture and processes that are prevalent in the institution. And one of the lovely things that I'm putting my hand up here, I hadn't thought this through properly, is the marvelous adaptability of the course, because almost all of the work you're doing in a particular setting, and the way that you approach completing the numerous assignments is, to a certain extent, determined by the circumstances in which you find yourself. We are able to offer something that is inherently setting specific. So we've got, for example, 20+% of our students come from special schools. We have a significant number from maintained schools, academies, faith schools, independent schools, international schools, and all of these people are finding that because it's a degree in work, or they are degrees in work, it suits them.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of the fact they can continue to live at home, that they can afford to do it, but that it can, in an everyday sense, reflect the setting in which they work. And so it's very good for the institution or the super institution, which might be a multi-academy trust, it might be a group of a diocese of Catholic schools, it might be a group of independent schools, it might be a group of international schools. And so everyone gains. And most importantly, the group that I feel haven't got that far fully yet, because is the children will gain, because they'll have teachers who are very much better prepared, and, if you like, adapted to their environment.
And my concern about the conversation around the kind of teacher crisis thing. We know that there are not enough teachers in the system, so what you're doing is brilliant to inspire people to want to be part of that. And everything, as we started, it's that the moral purpose is kind of baked. It's there already, and that grows. The thing that concerns me about my work is the number of comfortable schools that have got too many teachers. And I put it that bluntly, that there are too many people. Sorry, go on, George.
No. I bore people with the number of times I quote you on these things, Chris, because I think that the work that you do is of such importance. And one of your how do I describe it? It's not. It's one of your statements. It's just one of your statements that makes me chuckle. Is that you have described to me how you believe there are far too many schools hoarding teachers, and I think that's a great term.
Well, I put it this. I mean, it's a little sort of going into the weeds a little bit, but what I refer to as curriculum drift. So the classic mindset of, well, we'll get an extra maths teacher, an extra English teacher because they're rare, and we'll get them in, and then we struggle with all the the design technology and the physics and the chemistry and so on. But that's the kind of mindset. But curriculum drift is something that exists across the country, and in fact across the world. From my experience, it's no different anywhere. And so the understanding of what is the baseline provision that we should be providing, and where are we in comparison with that. I was dealing with a school in East Anglia this week where there were 250 teaching periods above of a kind of a baseline that had been designed into the system. Now, 250 teaching periods is if you take a 50 periods, like a cycle. So
a cycle, 2-week cycle. Yeah.
So that's each line of 50 periods. That's 5 people. Well, every line is 1.4 teachers, because you've got sort of non-contact time and so on. So we're actually talking about 7 staff. So that school has got 7 teachers more than the school down the road that's running at baseline because they can't get people. So those 7 teachers, so if you took 23,000, well, not 23,000, if you took the secondary schools, about 9,000 secondary schools across the country, there were 7 teachers in every one of them. It's not too difficult to get to the point where we're talking about thousands of teachers that are in these places. I calculated at one point it's about £10 billion worth of teaching. And then when people talk around, deficits and we haven't got enough money and whatever, that to me is why we need to explore it. That's the essence of curriculum analytics. It's deeper than that. Curriculum analytics is not about results and outcomes. It's about resourcing great quality education, as far as I'm concerned. It's making sure that every child has the opportunity that they should have. But we could talk for hours on that one, George. That's
it's
mm.
I just wish that every school would consider using your services. I don't think any school wouldn't benefit substantially. And that's me speaking as someone who's I have more than 40 years of experience of governing in schools.
Mm.
I'm not saying that I know everything about governance, but I do know a fair amount because I've been a governor of independent schools, state schools. I've been a trustee of a multi-academy trust. I've sat on various subcommittees. I've spent 10 years working on the management board of a virtual school for children in care. And it goes on and on and on. And so often I've been in discussions in schools about problems with finances, staffing, curriculum design. And in every case, if only they'd talk to you, because they would then be empowered to make much better decisions because they had the information they required.
Yeah.
And I've listened over the decades to people worrying about these things. Now you weren't around doing it, but there are so many benefits of knowing what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and to me, it comes back to that conversation we had a while ago about the fear of numbers.
Yes,
we present it in graphic form. So this is telling you, it's showing you where you're investing your money. Is that where it really needs to be? That's my question to most people. And most leaders that I speak to, they look at it and say, "Wow, I never knew. I just didn't realize. We're just doing what everybody else says to do." And then when you see it change, I talked to one guy after this summer. He said, "I'm not going back. We're doing this because I understand it. I've actually got people talking to each other in a way that they've never talked before. So it's not just about the set of numbers. It's about the understanding that gets into that, exactly as you're saying, George, that narrative around, okay, we're there, we understand, we're going to do this deliberately. Intentionality becomes the core."
Well, it's fascinating you say that, because I've got another old friend who's been, amongst other things, one of Her Majesty's inspectors, and he has a view that there's coming back to exactly what you've just said, intentionality. He says that it's all too common to go into a school that has got itself into a difficult situation, is placed in one of the, let's put it this way, the lower categories that Ofsted offers, and their immediate reaction is not to say, do we need to do some serious analysis of what's going on and then come to a series of decisions about how we can change our approach and improve. Their reaction is to just double down and think about how they can do more of the same things that have helped them fail.
Yes.
But the problem they face is that they're not equipped with the information they need to be confident about making effective changes.
Isn't that we talk about the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? That's the
yes. Well, it's easy to understand why it happens.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But if only people would have the confidence to speak to people like you. In my own business, and we have over the years done a lot of work around what would, in simple terms, we describe pupil voice, trying to gain a view of how children in an institution view both the institution and their wider lives, and how that might be impinging upon their learning. And it's very gratifying when you work with schools who appreciate the value of this information and embrace it. They come back with the most extraordinary stories of both individual pupils and groups of children whose educational and life experience has been enhanced simply because they knew what the problems were they were facing. You think, that's quite useful. And coming back to your question about curriculum, one of the things that you and I have discussed many times in the past is if you really understand the communities that you are serving, you are in a better position to try and modify your own provision to meet their needs.
Yes.
But unless you know what the communities are like, the challenges that they face, which may be socio-economic, they may be to do with crime or opportunity or income and deprivation of different types, how do you do it? And it's all about having the tools to gather the information and the will to analyze it effectively, and then plan to make the changes that are implied.
Absolutely. Let's end. I remember standing in Felixstowe in an academy there, and the head study looked out, over the field, and I could see at the back of the field is Felixstowe Port, so you could see all of that. And I just looked at the head and looked out the window and said, what difference does that stuff that we're looking at there make to what's going on in the school? Because that's where 90% of your learners are going to end up.
Yes.
It's not, they're not going to be dock workers. They'll be planners and logistics and driving, transport, and maths and all sorts of things going on. What difference does that make to because your children, I guarantee, are sitting on the back of this building looking out over that and watching the ships come and go. And he looked at me and he said, do you know, Chris, you're the only person that's ever asked me that question, and I have no answer for you. We have done nothing to think about what's outside that window. Now, that's where our sector analysis and, community understanding, we're doing it in Blackpool, we've done it in the Midlands, we're doing it in East Anglia, anywhere in the country. The learning and skills improvement planning is great post-16, but I'd like to see children inspired before we get it. That's what I've been writing for some time, and you've shared those things. That's if I was asked if I was going to change one thing, it would be that we joined up the thinking between post-16 and pre-16. I think there's so much to be done.
And I can only exhort people to read your marvelous Friday missives.
You're very kind on that, but thank you.
I think some of them have been simply brilliant. You know how much I've enjoyed them because I've written to tell you.
Yes, and I appreciate that email on Friday morning very, very much. But I'm astounded where those have got to. I mean, I know that they're shared around the school improvement program in Japan. They're being shared across Australia, Hong Kong, whatever. I did it because I wanted to get a channel of, I need to say some of these things that I've been feeling for 40 years, and it's important to say it. But thank you for your generosity. I really appreciate it. George, can we just bring in some? So there's a few comments that I mean, we're just a little over time, but I just think it's important that. Sophie, thank you for your comment. I'm pleased that what we've been talking about resonates with you. Yes, it's that issue about culture that we've referred to. I think your last sentence, the conversations that cut through the rhetoric and focus on how schools really function are exactly what the system needs right now. I would agree with you. I don't think that's happening enough. George, a quick thought on that?
Well, I'm feeling rather humbled. Sophie, you've written that so well. I feel that we've just you've sort of distilled out of our hour of ramblings what really matters. Yeah.
Thank you, Sophie. That's important. And then Steve Russell, no, learning doesn't stop. Absolutely right. But I think there's a responsibility there. I think that ties up with what we've sort of touched on with AI. Oh God, George, you could.
Well, no, it's just yes. Good for you, Steve.
Yeah. I think I was talking to someone yesterday talking about AI, and actually I think we need to be teaching children not just how to use it, but what questions to ask and how to respond to the answers. Yes, that's the critical thing.
Actually, sorry, you've triggered another response. The fear that I have with all aspects of technology, and AI is a particular example, is if we don't within the education system prepare people adequately to take advantage of it, all we're doing is increasing what is unfortunately known as the gap particularly with my initials, are between the haves and the have-nots, because boy, oh boy, can you do a lot if you're really well prepared to do so, using technology, and AI as a classic example. We must ensure that everyone is given the skills they need.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll bring on the last one, George. So this is Joanne talking about the degree apprenticeship within nursing. I think, sadly, one of the things that within the qualification range that we have in the English system is there's nothing in this field. There is very little that apart from health and social care, which is actually more about social care than health. But I think that there's two comments that you've made. I'll just flip between them, George, if you're reading those.
Yeah. I have a daughter who's a nurse, so I appreciate that.
Mm. Yeah, and again, we need to be championing this, this route. We need to be championing this route, and that's part of what we've been working on, and certainly I've been talking about in this sector understanding and teaching children that there are lots of ways forward. I don't think the reductive approach of qualifications is that they think that 3 A levels in sciences and maths gets them to be a doctor, where there's all of the layers behind that, where the caring professions are much more than just that.
And George, more important.
Yeah. Oh well, absolutely.
Particularly with our aging population.
Mm. Well, again, in when you look at all of the LSIPs around England, they all start with health and social care. I think probably 95% of them have got that as one of the top 5 priorities.
Yeah.
George, it's been a pleasure to have the conversation. Just the last question I ask everyone: if you could change one thing, what would it be?
Are we talking life in general, or are we talking about the education sector?
Education. If that question was life, it would be.
I just changed the emphasis for things for life skills. Make them far more important. Yeah,
I agree with you entirely. George, it's been a pleasure as always.
It's my pleasure, and good for you.
Thank you. So I love this. I'm just going to do the concluding parts. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for the contributions. We appreciate it. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're involved. Get others involved. Get involved in the conversation. If you need to contact me or at all, if you want to get involved in anything that we're doing, the details are there on the screen. info@smartcurriculum.net, or the phone number 01268 201 322. That will get you to the office. But please, if you anything that we've said you want to talk about, and if you want to contact George, do that through us, and then we'll pass it details on. But thank you for being here. Appreciate your involvement today. We're back in 2 weeks' time during BET. We're actually got Christine Cunliffe and Jill Howard from the Head Society, so looking at independent schools and the independent sector. Please come and get involved in those conversations. All the history is on YouTube or LinkedIn, but get involved. If you want the newsletter, please just subscribe. That would be a pleasure to get involved with you. But thank you to George. Appreciate your time with us today, and we'll speak to you soon.